Right.
All right. All right, we'll start in 1 minute. Thank you everybody for joining. Joe Repelding, Design 39 Campus with, let's see how many we have joining on YouTube. So 72 so far on YouTube and over 50 on our Zoom. So thanks. It's growing by the minute.
All right.
Critical conversations.
You know the best part about this being in California? Everybody's on time on Zoom.
That's right.
Late on Zoom.
That's right. Hey Chaz, I'm one of 10 kids, so we had this, curfew. 5:30 was dinner. 5:31, you didn't eat anything. So it was critical that we had that time together.
You're on time.
Yeah. So if everybody would be so kind to mute their mic, that would be super helpful. So if you're on the Zoom call, you can mute your mic. This is our town hall meeting. Looks like we have. Perfect. Thanks for muting. All right. Okay, let's get started today. Thank you. All right, Joe Repelding, principal here at Design 39 Campus. We're one of the 39 schools in Poway Unified, and we're coming together today. So how we'd like to start, though, is just with a moment of silence for those who've been discriminated against, those who've been marginalized, and most critically, those who have lost their lives because of the color of their skin. So in the way that's proper to you, if you could take a moment of silence.
And set the timer for 30 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. So again, Joe Repelding, principal here at Design 39. And about a year ago, Chaz came to me and said, hey, Joe, we have a problem at Design 39. You have 1,200 kids there. We have obviously our Black students there, and they're using the N-word. And he said, what are you going to do about it? Not what are we going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? And so kind of had to stop and pause and say, wow, what are we going to do about that? And so we pulled together our Black parent group and didn't know exactly how it was going to start. We met in a room and I was super nervous. Remember, I'm a white male of privilege, right? And that's how it started. I'm a white male of privilege. Yet I do have positional power and I do have personal power, and I don't need to stand up and talk for you, but I will stand with you. I will be an ally. And that's where we started to learn together. And there was, early on, we said we're gonna talk real. And I knew I was gonna make a lot of mistakes. I remember one instance when I was talking about, hey, we're getting ready, we're gonna go launch this experience also after our staff to the principals, all the principals in Poway Unified. And I said, hey team, just, I wanna make sure in my best white voice, I don't wanna make sure you offend anybody. Don't sound like an angry Black woman. And I got called on the carpet right there. And that's what it was about. Like right in the moment that we had that trust that they could navigate and love me through my ignorance. And that through that, I understood that why are we angry? I read the autopsy recently from George Floyd. A mechanical cardioid restraint that took his life. In another era, that would be a rope around a neck, and we would call that lynching. That happened in 2020. So now I understand why we're angry. And so we need to do proper introductions because we have a team here that's helping us through this. And so I'd like to introduce small, not but, small and mighty. So Chaz, you can take it from there.
So welcome to everyone to this forum on YouTube and also here. I got to say, we're humbled. Joe and I talk offline quite a bit when we can about what this all is about. And at the end of the day, it's about our children, our kids. My wife and I have 3 children. All 3 have been at Design 39. Our last one, our baby, just promoted out. And we were, called to action by the incident that happened at the school. And I just felt like we had to take a different approach to raise not just, you know, awareness at the school, but also the awareness around the campus. It was really important that we did that. So with that, I want to start off with Roxanne and introduce her and go around the team. And Roxanne, you want to start?
Sure. Hi, my name is Roxanne McCrae Gordon. My son is Wyatt Gordon. He's in the 3rd grade at D39. And I'm honored to be a part of this small and mighty No Place for Hate group. We have accomplished a lot in a short time with a small amount of people, but I'm happy to be a part of it. Thank you, Chaz.
Julius and Geronda, would you introduce yourselves, please?
Hello, everyone, Poway Unified family and community. I'm Julius Leach, Geronda Leach here. We have 3 students in the Poway Unified School District. Youngest is Julius Jr. at D39, 9-year-old. And we have 2 teenagers at Del Norte High School, freshman and sophomore, Camila and Kelly. We also have an adult daughter who recently just graduated from Columbia University with her master's degree.
Michael and Christina.
Hi, everybody. Michael and Christina. Our son, Christian, just got promoted from 8th grade at D39 and is now going to high school. And my daughter also, she is a sophomore and at Del Norte High School. So.
Thank you. Noni, you're up, darling. Dahlia, you're up.
Oh, hi, everyone. My name is Dahlia, and I'm a parent of a 15-year-old at Westview High School.
Also, our quiet consultant is my wife, Carrie. She's there if she wants to say hello.
Hi, Carrie.
You're muted. You gotta turn your mute off.
I too have 3 kids who went to Design 39, Peyton, Ava, and Caden. 2 of them are at Del Norte High School.
So with that, thank you, everyone. Did I miss anyone? Did I get everybody? So just one last thing, just quickly before we get into this. Again, this is an important subject matter. Part of this forum today is also to talk about how we talk to our children about what they have seen, what they are seeing, and what they're going to see, quite frankly, going forward. So it's important that we do not shy away from this subject. As Joe has told you guys earlier, you know, our group of small and mighty, we speak real. We really speak to what's going on. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that Amon Gordon is on the call with us. I know he was on another call. That's Roxanne's husband. They were doing a call at Stanford. So don't want to forget Brother Amon either. So we thank you guys for being here. We're going to get into the next part of this segment. Joe talked about why we're here. We're going to show you current images, and I'll let Joe and Roxanne take it away.
Thank you, Chaz. So Roxanne, we've been talking a little bit about 2 Americas, and you're helping me kind of come to understanding on what that means. Do you want to help us a little bit there?
Right. Do we have any images, Joe, or just?
Yeah, sure do.
Okay. So.
Now.
Wonderful. Okay. So there is basically, we live in America, but there's 2 Americas. There's an America for African Americans and Black people, and there's an America for white people and everyone else. And that's clearly defined by what's taken place over the past week with George Floyd and what's been taking place, the police brutality on African American men for quite some time now. And as you can see, we have this slide, and this is a pretty deep slide because it shows images of 4 white Americans who committed murders, and the number of murders that they committed are on the bottom of the slide. And then at the bottom, you see just a small percentage of the Black Americans who lost their lives really sensibly for no reason at all. And there's a discrepancy there, a clear discrepancy. And there clearly is two different justice systems and two different Americas.
Thank you, Roxanne. And next, we're going to talk a little bit about white privilege. I talked a little bit earlier about that, and I struggled with that on my own. And recently, I was sent this video, and Michael's going to join me here shortly. So let me push this video up next.
While you're doing that, Joe, I just wanted to add to what Roxanne was saying about the two Americas, and understanding that the images of the Black individuals on the screen, all of those were non-criminal activities, but yet they were all killed. And the first four were all criminal activities, but they're currently in jail right now. And outside of going through the normal process of being arraigned and being, judge, jury, and ended up being found guilty, they're all alive.
So if you can join us in this next activity, it's holding up 10 fingers, and you're going to hear some statements made by the moderator, along with the images here in this video.
Check your privilege edition. Put a finger down if you have been called a racial slur. Put a finger down if you've been followed in a store unnecessarily. Put a finger down if someone has crossed the street to avoid passing you. Put a finger down if you've had someone clench their purse in an elevator with you. Put a finger down if you've had someone step off of an elevator to keep from riding with you. Put a finger down if you've been accused of not being able to afford something expensive. Put a finger down if you have had fear in your heart when being stopped by the police. Put a finger down if you have never been given a pass on a citation that you deserved. Put a finger down if you have been stopped or detained by police for no valid reason. Put a finger down if you have been bullied solely because of your race. Put a finger down if you have been denied service solely because of the color of your skin. Put a finger down if you've ever had to teach your child how not to get killed by the police. Any fingers left?
Nope.
That's privilege.
Michael.
As you guys can see, I think if you guys participated in that, there's a wide diversity of responses coming from your end. And look, we all live unique, special lives. And today I'm coming to you because my wife is Black and my kids are mixed, and they're in the Poway Unified School District. They're at Design 39. They're at Del Norte. But the perspective that I want to give you guys is a perspective from serving in the United States Marine Corps for 12 years. I had the honor of serving 12 years in the Marine Corps. And I think for me, it was probably the solid foundation I needed as a young man to break the diversity in my own self. So simple example, when I joined the Marines back in 1995, my rack mate in boot camp was a Hispanic kid. And I think up to that point in my life, being from Louisiana, I've only dealt with whites and Blacks. I don't remember any scenario in my life where I met a Hispanic kid. I'm sure they were there, but I just don't remember. So what the Marine Corps did is they basically force you into a lifestyle that you have no choice but to change. They create cross-functional teams. They create opportunities for you to bridge your own stupidity and ignorance. And for me, it was an eye-opener because if there was a Black kid and a white kid that would be arguing or not liking each other or hate each other's guts, what the Marines would do is they would force them. Oh, you don't like you? You don't like you? Okay, now you're roommates. And if you guys don't figure it out in the next 2 or 3 days, you're going to have duty all weekend. And then you're going to go on field ops together. Everything you're going to do from this point forward will be together, and to the point where this bias that you have amongst each other has no choice but to eradicate, because you have to lean into each other and put your own indiscretions and your own mindset aside and say, what do we got to do to survive? What do we have to do so we are not putting ourselves out there? And what I realized is when the military did that for us, and when I say us, there was moments where I had biases and vice versa. when our leaders put us in positions where we had no choice but to change had no choice but to show up. And the greater the resistance in life, the greater the change if we're willing to face the hard facts and have conversations that most people are afraid to have. And by looking at this platform right here today, this shows me that our community is willing to listen, they're willing to act, and they're willing to change. And I would challenge our group and our teachers and our leaders that the last time we spoke at Poway Unified School District, we spoke to every principal in Poway Unified. And I challenged the teachers and the principals to create cross-functional teams that are comprised of whites, blacks, Mexican, Filipinos, Asians, Indians, every single race that you can create. So when we do have racial issues and we do have the willingness of kids not willing to change, we can force and we can help eradicate that change. We create cross-functional teams that come around a situation of someone using the N-word or someone using racial slurs. We can force them, we can isolate the incident. So simple example, let's just say we have teachers that are black, Mexican, Filipino, white, and Indian, and the principals identify that these leaders would be a great cross-functional team to deal with the racial issue as it comes up. We did the same thing in the Marines, and it helped force and bring forth change. And today I present to you guys that we as leaders and as our community, we can't change what happens outside of our school, but we can change what happens in our school. And we can put as much structure in place to eliminate as much failure as possible for our community. When things happen, we have to be able to step up, deal with the issues, not be afraid to make mistakes along the way, but be anti-racial doesn't mean that you don't have racial issues. Anti-racial is the willingness amongst yourself to stand up and say, maybe I do have an issue and how can I fix it? If you do that, I think that our kids would do that. And if our kids are doing it, I think our parents can change. And I think it's a cross-functional, holistic approach, taking what we've done in the military and bringing it to our local community.
Thank you for that call to action, Roxanne.
Hi, Amon just joined us. He would like you to introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody joining us. My name is Amon Gordon, Wyatt Gordon's father, third, fourth grader now at Design 39. Got involved with this group, advocating for my son, really being anti-racist. I feel like there's a number of different things that anyone who is interested in, trying to remedy some of these inequalities that we're facing in our country. I mean, they really, if you're going to call a number of them into question, I think that educational curriculums are certainly one place to eliminate some of those biases and discrimination that takes place. The school to prison pipeline is a very real thing. And it is a number of minority students, not just Black students, that are jeopardized of being just another one of those individuals swept up by that whole phenomenon, as well as a number of other things that are in our system. Look at the way that some individuals are receiving healthcare or not necessarily receiving healthcare, as we can kind of see, the underserved communities, basically more apt to, contract the COVID-19 virus and, succumb to the illness as it is for lack of treatment. So, I feel that there's a number of socioeconomic areas that, being anti-racist can be affected. And I think those are just a few.
Yeah, so Amon, we had some conversations, you and I, and with our community about growing up as a Black man and a young child, and even up to today, where you have to take certain actions that I would never have to do as a white man.
Correct. It's certainly, I instill in my son the importance of being vigilant, not hyper vigilant. I think hyper vigilance can lead to, acute anxiety in our kids, which is not a good thing, as if there's not enough to worry about already. But, you know, being aware of your surroundings everywhere you go, you know, making sure that you leave out the door the same way you came in the same day. Yeah, there's a number of things that I, you know, have learned to do, you know, for instance, you know, late night walking in parking garages, you know, and there may be, you know, certain individuals around. I really have to, you know, make myself known, if you will, you know, cough, clear my throat, or, you know, I tend to shuffle my feet, you know, and make sure that I make some noise to say, hey, you know, well, there's something, you know, there's someone here. You know, there's also just in certain instances, you know, not necessarily being a former athlete. There's certain things that I, you know, had to really prepare myself for, you know, being in certain, even in elevators with, you know, females that you don't know. It's just certain things that you have to do to safeguard yourself. And as we do live in a dual society, you know, whether people tend to, you know, view it as such, and those are just to name a few. You know, when I drive, instead of having my ID and my wallet, instead of having my insurance card, you know, deep inside the glove box, as you know, to have to reach over my console and into the glove box, hopefully not at night, you know, I have all of those handy, either right in the visor, you know, to where if I roll the window down, the policeman could actually reach right in and pull out everything that it is that he needs, while I have my dome lights on, windows down, and hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. These are just things that we, you know, as African-American males, you know, have learned over time and become accustomed to safeguarding ourselves and safeguarding our most prized possessions, which is our body, our life, our essence, you know, just as we navigate on a day-to-day basis.
And Joe, if I can just add one thing real quick. I ran into an old neighbor today, and her grandson, this lady's white, her grandson is half Black and a third Black or something, but you can't really tell what nationality he is. But she said, and they were marching near there where they were protesting last night. He just didn't want, you know, he was afraid to lose his life, so he didn't get out of the car. And this is a kid that has a white mother, a white grandmother, and he has like a third of African-American blood in him, but it's real. I mean, it could be a drip, it doesn't matter. And these are different ways that we have to move around in society. That's a lot, it's heavy.
Yeah. Dahlia's going to add some comments around just the stress and the emotional impact this has.
Yes, and so to what Aman and Roxanne were sharing, this is a stress that has been infested in our lives as African Americans since we were very young. That spills out in a lot of different areas, especially in health-related situations, stress, high blood pressure, fear. Just the fear of not knowing what happens when your son is walking out the door or your daughter is going out the door. Are they going to come back? Is something going to happen? It's just this heavy cloud that we have to try to lift and deal with on an ongoing basis. It's very important as a white person to understand that and try to imagine your life where at every moment that you have this stress on top of every other standard stresses that we deal with in our lives.
Thank you, Dahlia. We talked a lot about allyship, and you know, I've been reflecting on this as well, that it's easy to write a Facebook post. It's actually even easy to hold up a sign and even go on a march. And I would argue that it's even easy to hold your friend accountable when they say something racist. What's not easy is to live the life that you have every single day. Right? And so how might we as white men and women create allyship for action? And with that, we'd like to talk a little bit about peaceful protests and action towards love. Julius. Create allyship for action. And with that, we'd like to
I want everyone to really look at these shirts and really just let that register. No place for hate. In March 6, 2019, my daughter came home from school and she told me, she said, "Hey, Dad, I was called a nigger today. I was made fun of with monkey jokes." A young man that she thought was her friend just flipped a switch and turned against her and started calling her all type of niggers, you monkey, you. And she explained to the young man, "Hey, my dad is going to come talk to you about this." And so he began for the rest of the day to run around the school and tell everyone, "Hey, I'm going to get beat up by this big black nigger after school." Now I'm going to talk to you straight because that's how I am. That's just who I am. And this hurt me. This hurt me. So when I got the phone call from Principal from D39 about this situation, I didn't know how Principal Joe was going to respond to this. I didn't know what kind of man he was. But believe me, since I've known him, I know he's a stand-up guy. He's standing with me. And so we formed this small group. Now, when we have these situations at school with all this hate, with kids uneducated about the effect of racism and how it affects Black people, a Black man like myself, I could have been George Floyd on the ground in the middle of the day, broad daylight, handcuffed. 3 other guys hold me down. 2 other guys hold me down. 1 guy's watching and 1 guy with his knee on my neck. I could have been that guy. I want you guys for that to register. I could have been that guy. Now, with all that going on, we're protesting about that. And we're going, and it's protest, and it's powerful protest. I've been watching different feeds, different news channels, on social media, people from my hometown, Oakland, California, actually do some really good protests. But there also been, you know, a rioting and looting, and I don't support that at all. Okay, I feel power is in peaceful protest. But let me tell you something. Racism has been around for 400 years, and it is not going away without unity. Without unity, it's not going to go away. So let me share a story with you, and I'm gonna tell you a lot. Our kids. I'm gonna get back to our kids because that's my focus right here. Is to my child, when she went to school, to her safe haven, which is a school, and she was racially discriminated towards. Well, it's not learned at school. It's not learned but amongst the peers of the kids. They learn it at home. Okay. So these young people, they're not, this is not nothing naturally for them that they do. Okay. They're learning it. And I've been living in this community for the last 4 years, and I have a story to share. My wife and I was asleep one night and we heard our doorbell ring. It was 1 o'clock in the morning, but it was during the summer. So, you know, the kids were out of school, but it was an unusual doorbell ring at 1 in the morning. I had to go to work the next day. So I was in a nice, good sleep, and my sleep was interrupted. Well, I checked out my window, see who it was, and it was a little girl at my door crying. And this little girl was a friend of one of my daughters. This was a white little girl, and she was at my door crying. And I ran downstairs and I opened the door. I said, "Are you all right?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Have anyone touched you or hurt you?" She said, "No." I said, "All right, we can work with this then." I said, "I need your father's number." I said, let me call him ASAP. And I got him on the phone. He was at my door within 3 to 5 minutes, like a real father's supposed to be. And we got that resolved. But my point is this little girl lived about 4 or 5 blocks from my house. She walked past all her other friends' house and she came to my house. Not because we were not because we were the Black family because we were the family that she felt safe to come to. So my point is our young people, our young kids learn that behavior from home. They know they do not naturally have those behavior. So I'm going to end right there. And I play ball. So right now we having a huddle, and I want everyone to give me a no place for hate on 3. 1, 2, 3. No place for hate. All right.
Talia?
Yes, I just want to just to piggyback on what Julius was saying. So I think it's important, I think we are aware, but if you're not aware that inequality has been deeply entrenched in our systems. And I think Julian touched upon that. And it is very, there's someone on the chat who says that this is devastating and hard to hear. Yes, it is absolutely hard to hear. It is absolutely devastating. And it is something that we have had to deal with as African Americans in this country. Imagine actually walking in those shoes. And that level of awareness brings a lot of different feelings that we have from, where do we go from here? How do we, how many times do we have to say or advocate for racial justice, right? How do we support our allies without feeling like we're overburdened and we're wearing, what's the word I'm trying to think of? We're overburdened, or we're taking on more than we can handle emotionally. So all of those things happen for us. In fact, we talked about this, like, sometimes you feel like, this is just not my role to take you where you need to go, especially in today's day and age. There's so much information, there's so much, there's so many resources out there. But I know that as parents of Poway Unified School District, we definitely decided that this is something that this is a role that we want to be part of and definitely support D39 and any other parents who are ready to take this journey.
So Dahlia, we want to talk a little bit about allyship and resources at the end of this. What we really want to get into right now is the guiding questions. And we have a few questions that we'd like to start with. First one, Dahlia, is how does what does allyship mean to you? And what qualities or actions can help white people be effective allies? And that's an interesting question. White people be effective allies. Why that question?
That is an interesting question. So for me, allyship is a couple things, is doing the work on your own, in addition to asking questions, not necessarily not being fearful. It's okay to be fearful. It's okay to not know. It's okay to make mistakes. It's not okay to be silent. Allyship for me does not mean silence. For me, when you're silent, that means that you're supporting whatever, the unequalness that happens in our day-to-day lives. Allyship means taking the time to educate your children and letting them know, whether they're your white children or Indian children, not Native American, Indian children, or Native American or Latino children, because there's also learning that we can do about other people of color as well. So to me, that's allyship.
And
I would like to piggyback on that as well. I think allyship could take on multiple different forms. Me being a former athlete and being a significant part of a group within a larger team construct, synergy and collaboration, I think, is something that at D39 is preached heavily within the curriculum. And I mean, we are also individuals bringing that same fervor to our endeavors here. So with that being said, I think, although it is an issue where we as African Americans, as Blacks, don't feel that we have to endure the racism and then make the effort to also educate others, about these things, but at the same time, making ourselves available, such as we are right now, and being willing to stand in the gap and do the work, similar to what Dahlia is saying, I think is important. I think that at the beginning of this group, we also, said some of our goals. One of those was, the elimination of racial epithets, eliminating microaggressions. I think microaggressions are one of those things that are enormous to us. Me, I'm 6'3", 300 pounds. I'm a physically imposing person. That was my job. That doesn't make me a bad person. So along the lines of, forming positive bonds and allyship, it would be to, those who are interested in, how they can help, would be to, really open up their ears to listen and eliminate, those microaggressions. You're going to have to sit down and understand someone else's story as to why those little unspoken microaggressions, or it's all uncommunicated. It's with body language. All of those things add up, and basically, just negating the fear. And I feel like to stop the overall fear of Black is not bad. There's so many, connotations, Black magic versus white magic, angel food cake versus devil food cake. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Everything Black is not bad, so really just opening our ears once we have actually stepped out there to cross the line, to bridge the gap. It's important for these people out there to listen first and foremost, and stop the negative perpetuation of a negativistic view of Black folks. There's no need for everyone to be afraid. I think really given the nature of the current status of our country, it is us that really should be afraid.
And if I can just chime in on that quickly, what's taking place in this country right now is a movement. It's a movement that's really led by young people. Young people are courageous, they're on the front lines and they're moving, and they are not going to accept this. They are tired. They do not want this for their generation. They do not want the hate, the ugliness, and the racism. They want something better and different. So they will march. That's why they're there all night. They're on the front lines, and you see every nationality out there because it's about change, and they're not going to accept this. We didn't have the courage at the age we are now that they have at their age. And for the people who are out there peacefully protesting, we are so proud of them because they are demanding change for their future.
And I want to.
Yeah, Dahlia, would it be okay to, part of this town hall, bring in some voices from our own community here within Poway Unified? We have Jashawn with us. Jashawn, could you go ahead and unmute and share?
Absolutely. I just saw the email from Deshawn. Go ahead and ask. Go ahead, Deshawn.
Hello, how you guys doing?
Good.
Hi.
Thanks for having us on. So, this is a conversation that we've been having with a lot of our colleagues, whether that's on the phone, whether that's keeping up with social media, the news. And I would like to get to the nuts and bolts of this issue. Obviously we've been protesting going all the way back to the 60s. We've had our spokesmen like Martin Luther King, like Malcolm X. And I think for me, the question is, how can we, because we're all here because racism still exists, B, because of police brutality, because as being an African-American in the United States, we're not treated fair. It's not an even playing field. So how can we get this resolved? Obviously, we've been protesting for decades and centuries. So that's not the answer, because we've been doing it for so long and it's been the same thing, same results. You mentioned earlier, someone mentioned earlier about this is a different time where it's not just African Americans protesting now, it's all nationalities protesting. That's something we've never seen before.
Ever.
We've never seen that. So I think that is change, but at the same time, is this younger generation protesting for social media likes? Are they protesting because they have nothing else to do? Or do they really understand the cause and the change that really needs to be addressed? So I ask, is it more important for us to go to the polls and change some of these laws? Isn't that more important than protesting? How about we change the law so when there is another police brutality, there's an automatic 20 to 30 years for that officer? Until we change the laws and change what's on the ballots, I think we're going to continue to protest, and people are going to continue to speak their minds on this issue. But until we go to the polls with this and implement laws, change the laws from the 19, however old those laws are, I think we need to go to the polls, start with our cities, start with our governors, our senates, and start there. Someone mentioned earlier, this stuff is kind of addressed at home. You know, each parent, they believe in, some parents was raised on believing that Blacks are second-class citizens. And they implement that to kids. That's why you have some kids within our school districts that address our young African-American kids as monkeys, as niggers, or whatever words you have, because they learn that from home. So there's a lot of things, there's a lot of things that needs to be addressed. However, I think the main thing is our police brutality, implementing laws, changing the laws, so when something happens, when a man is pulled over or arrested, that police officer needs to think twice before he takes unfair action on an African American.
Jashawn, I just want to interrupt you just a moment. I think everything you're saying is 100%, and we do have to. Part of what we came together was to discuss how it has to go beyond the words and the feelings. It has to go, and you know, part of this town hall is to talk about taking action, and that's definitely something that we're going to address. But to piggyback on what you said, the vote, understanding the legislation that's going around, understanding how you can hold your council members accountable, how you can hold your senators at the city, county, and state level, all of these things, and knowing what is the impact to people when you're saying yes for a proposition versus a no, right? Understanding that and then making those decisions. Absolutely. I want to just table that discussion till the end. I think Joe had mentioned we have some resources we're going to share because we do have some other questions for our parents. The next, did I hear something? Okay, the next question here is, how would you define anti-racism and what actions can you personally take?
Can you repeat your question?
Absolutely. This is a question for the small and mighty. How would you define anti-racism and what actions can you personally take?
Dolly, can we answer that? Being anti-racist is really being a part of the solution, being committed to dismantling racism, systemic racism,
systemic inequalities,
yeah,
systemic injustice, and that is not just one area. I mean, our nation is a nation of laws. Our nation is a nation of, systems. Our nation, has healthcare system. We have the criminal justice system. We have the educational system. We have the healthcare system. So within these systems, the individuals who are allowed to be the powers that be and make the decisions are those who are implementing those actual articles that allow for those inequalities and injustices to go forward. So it is at every level, it's within education.
Nigger.
I know everybody heard that. So this is the reality, and I know that disturbing. Go ahead.
Who was that?
It's a Zoom bomb that happens. So these are people coming on and saying inappropriate things, and it's just the reality of what's happening right now.
How does that happen?
To that point,
That was a little kid.
Yeah.
This is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
This is what we're talking about. This is the cowardice that we're talking about.
That's right.
Whoever it is, you coward.
And
whoever it is.
I think this speaks.
We're here live, direct, not hiding our faces.
Show your face.
Not doing any of that.
This is
now.
what
They removed him.
this is the reality of 2020, and I think this is the core of how we came to this group. There are more people on this call than whomever just said and spoke that. And this again goes to the no place for hate, because that's exactly what that was. That was hate trying to again change the narrative, refocus the conversation. We are here to eradicate that hate. We are here, and everybody on this call is here to be part of a solution, part of a change. We will not tolerate nor back down from causing good to happen in the world. This is why all of us are here, and it's a stark reminder. I was watching something the other night about this.
I have a question here. So,
I'm so sorry, sir. If you could just pause your question.
No, I'm sorry. I can understand. I do apologize for saying this, but I can understand as a grown-up, if somebody says that, I can handle it. My 7-year-old, if somebody says that to them, what do I do about that? I mean, my daughter's teacher's here. Mm-hmm. She has had a situation like that happen to her. We're still trying to process it. And this happens.
So if I may, I'm not sure what school district your daughter's in, if it's our school district or not, but the very premise of your question is why we are here, sir. Our children were affected, just like your daughter may have been, by a child in a school in the school district. My son, who's a beautiful kid, who's never had a sour bone in his entire existence, now 14 years old, someone that he was trying to protect was being abused by the word nigger. My family comes from the Jim Crow South in Georgia. Reason the definition, look up the word nigger, look up the definition of it. It's a negative connotation, always has been for a very long time. And by the way, most of the adults that use this language know what its connotation is. Black folks, white folks, Latinos, anyone alike, you see it in the movies, etc. So to address your question directly, first and foremost, you need to be honest with your child. And you need to explain to them what these differences are on a substantive level, what they can see with their eyes that they know is different. You need to acknowledge that. Now, what they cannot see with their eyes and what they do not know with their brains, because their brains are still developing, is what is happening around them. It's called perception or perspective. You as their parent are going to have to give them that perspective.
Right.
You're going to have to strengthen them in faith if you have a faith, and you're going to have to give them that perspective. I give that to my 3 children all the time. Be aware of your surroundings, but understand that not everybody truly understands you and may not ever want to get to understand you. There's nothing you can do about that, sir. But what you can do is strengthen her resolve or his resolve by telling them the truth as you see it and as you know it. And if you do that, that's how it starts. It starts there. You don't have to have somebody come in from the outside and tell your child that. You should tell them that. But as a Black father in these United States, with a family from the Jim Crow South, I have firsthand knowledge and experience, so I can share that with my children. But not, there's a lot of white parents that cannot do that. Now, my wife is white. She's been around me more than half of my life. And there are discussions that we have about situations like this. So she has to get an understanding of why I approach things the way I approach them. It's not because I don't get it, how the white, as Joe has said so eloquently before, how white privilege is. I grew up in a white privileged school. I went to a Catholic school. I saw it all the time. What you got to understand about this particular question, and I'm glad you posed that question. We all have to speak and talk to our children directly about the facts. Because remember now, when we were children, some of us, there was nothing. There was the news, there was what your parents told you, there was probably what your grandparents told you, and there was what the teachers told you. And that was kind of it. Today, as an example, what did we just have? Somebody jumped on and bombed us with terrible language and all this kind of stuff. There are too many distractions that detract from the facts. And the facts are, there are children of different races and colors being marginalized, being bullied, being called names. And the people that are doing this, and I'm going to tell you right now, they're not that smart not to know. They actually know, they know enough to be dangerous, and we have to stop that. And the way you stop that is you educate your children, you educate your friends. We told the kids, I'll finish with this. We told the kids in the class when we were on the campus with Joe, under Joe's guidance, when you're a student in your class and someone throws out, you know, the word nigger, or they throw out the word WAP or anything like that, because this is not just about blacks, but we're here about a black issue at the moment. You have to stop them in their tracks. Hey, dude, that's not how we roll here. That's not who we are on this campus. If you want to do that, you might want to leave the school, because we're not doing that here. And that's what it takes. And that's the best way I can tell you to handle it, but address it. Do not shy away from it. And for God's sakes, don't just let it pass, please.
If I can just add something really quick regarding the person who jumped on, change is coming.
It is.
It really is.
It is coming.
They can jump on and do whatever they want. This America is going to be different. It's changing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to be black or white anymore. So if the person's still on there who did that and can hear this, you're a coward, and change is still coming.
That's right. Thank you, Roxanne. And I
Thank
wanted
you, Roxanne.
I know Geronda wants to say something. I wanted to add to what Chaz is saying to the parent who called in. It's also important for your child to know about their history, and that the history predates slavery, right? And teach them about that self-love and pride that comes from being an African American in this country and beyond. You know, myself, I'm Haitian American. My parents immigrated here when I was 4 years old, and so I grew up in the U.S. And I brought with me the pride that I have as a Haitian person. I had to navigate myself through, you know, being different, having an accent, learning to get rid of my accent because I felt that I had to actually fit in, and to navigate not only with my own women, you know, Black people who look like me, but also white people. And so that was a challenge for me growing up. It's definitely made me stronger and the person that I am today. But I had a very strong history. My Haitian history, those roots are very deep, and they got me through it, in addition to the beautiful friends that I had that helped me get through it as well. So that's very important. Geronda, you were going to say something? No? Okay, you're good. Okay.
Want to move to the next question? Then we can also,
Yes.
it's helpful when
Yes.
we have the town hall time at the end.
So the next question, I want to kind of shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about the concept of being colorblind. I think we've all heard it. You know, well, people are people, all lives matter. You know, I grew up, you just treat everybody the same. I want to hear some thoughts about that from our panel, from our mighty parents.
So we learned this. I have a very diverse family. One side of our family is Italian American. They're second generation Italians, United States. That's Carrie, my wife's family. The other part of my family is a big portion of my family, a third of it, are from Turkey. So they're of Muslim descent, because my uncle married a Turkish woman, and I have Turkish cousins, and that's my family. And so I have that. And then, of course, my family is 75% West African, 18% Indian. So we're a mix. And a lot of our a lot of our gatherings are like, you know, the United Colors of Benetton when we get together for a party, you know, and it's a good thing. But the reason the colorblind thing came up, I think that was a term from the 80s.
I love Benetton back in the 80s. Come on now.
Yeah. Remember that? Y'all remember that. Y'all know. You probably saved one of them in your keepsake. But colorblind means different things to different people. But what I want to share with my white brothers and sisters is this. Being colorblind is not being ignorant. And what I hate the most about what I've seen over the last few weeks from people that call themselves friends of mine, I'm talking about white folks here. They're having a hard time perceiving that they really don't understand. So it's not enough to just say, hey, man, I'm colorblind. I don't see that. You do, because that's part of that white privilege that you have. There's no way you cannot see it. What you have to understand is you need to be empathetic about how that, to our very core, affects us. And so you can be colorblind, that's fine, but with an understanding that you might not ever really get it, and that's okay. But you need to admit to yourself that it's okay that you don't get it. Please do not come up to me or any of my other brothers and tell me you understand. Because the truth of the matter is, there's no chance of you understanding. You got 400 years that we've got a head start on you dealing with this. There's no way you could absolutely 100% understand it. And that goes to the PhD professors at universities teaching this stuff. There's no way you can actually, there is no book that will give you the core feeling of what it means to be colorblind. For Black folks in this society, when we walk around, we do our best every day to make sure that we treat everyone with respect. Everyone, because we know what it feels like to not be treated in kind.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I was just thinking as you're talking that, the idea of being colorblind can be such a falsity, right? It's a false narrative that we teach ourselves to pretend like there aren't differences. There are differences, and that's perfectly fine. The fact is that we shouldn't be judged by our differences. And I think that's what the difference is, right? No pun intended. And it's an insult when you say to a Black person, I just don't see color. Yeah, you do. You might not want to admit it, but you do. And that's really the reality. And I think what you're trying to say is, I wouldn't judge you by the color of your skin. And so a lot of times it's really about being mindful of the language that you use, how you speak, because that right there can be very insulting to a person of color. Does anybody else have any comments about colorblindness before we go on to the next?
I'll add a couple things just from my perspective. So our children have a ton of nationalities. I often refer to us as the United Nations. My grandmother was from Mexico. My grandfather was from the Philippines. My father is a Black man from Alabama. So I have gotten to enjoy an array of amazing foods and cultures. And one of the things for me that has always kind of stuck to me is, I realize that in all nationalities, we have a ton in common. If we sit around the table, and this is part of what we did as a group, is we sat around and we talked about our own experiences, our own perspectives. But at the end of the day, there's an amazing thread of things that we have in common once we start talking openly and freely without this fear of, I don't want to offend, or what if I say the wrong thing, or they're going to take it wrong. I think too, what I've discovered, and I've been asked a ton of times because people can just tell that I'm mixed with a slew of things. So one of the common questions I get is, what are you? And this speaks to watching what we say to people, because many times I'm asked that in a harmless per se type of way. People aren't trying to offend me, but I think to myself, what do you mean? What am I? I'm a human, and I'm mixed with a lot of different nationalities. And to me, they're all beautiful. There's some differences, but together that is the fabric of America, is we all bring something to the table. We all bring beauty and difference. And if we can get past the judging people at first glance, or because someone has a stature or a build, or, the other day at work, I saw a man and he was filled with tattoos from head to toe. And in a moment, because of what society will tell you or TV will tell you, in a moment, we have to check our own thoughts to not allow ourselves to think or to slap a label on somebody before they even open their mouth. If we can even just do that within ourselves and soul search our own individual biases, because everybody has them, spoken or unspoken. Sometimes they're completely unconscious and we don't even know they're there. But if we can capture all of those moments and watch how we think and what we say to one another, that in itself is a step in the right direction. And if we see our children say something that is out of line or that is labeling somebody before they even know them, we have to catch that as well and correct it. And then maybe, to me, we will truly not see color, truly not see things that don't matter. Because at the end of the day, there's good and bad in all nationalities. It doesn't matter who you are. There's good and there's bad, and it has nothing to do with the color of your skin. So I think, to me, that's true colorblindness. If we can get there to where we all capture the labels that we smack on one another, driving down a street or just seeing an image, then we'll be in a better place.
I appreciate that perspective. I was sitting there like shaking my head, just listening to you, just taking it all in and it just makes a lot of sense to me. Anyone else before we go on to the last question? And then from that point, we'll open up the resources that we have to share with the audience. Anyone have any comments to make? Geronda, Julius, Iman, Chaz, no, Michael, nothing? Okay.
Hey. Okay, I'll chime in a little bit. I've been quiet for a little while. What I want to say is that, hey, Iman, give me one, buddy. What's your name?
Michael, no.
Hey, Michael, give me one.
In the gym.
Jim, give me one.
Jim down at the bottom.
Jim at the bottom.
Jim, he can't hear us.
What I'm doing is I want to let everyone know that as a Black man, and I see anybody in the community, I'm going to show that enthusiasm, that warmth, that love, and there's no reason to switch up or act different. Be yourself when you're around each other and around Black people, because you don't want to judge nobody. You want to just be yourself and remain humble. Also remain humble. In this community, I walk around a lot, and I notice people across the street. Sometimes, and this is before COVID-19. So, what I want to say is that, for me, just be yourself. When I met Joe and got to really got to know him, what I admire about him the most is that Principal Joe, I'm referring to Principal D39. What I admired about him the most was that he was himself. He said, I'm gonna mess up. He said, but at the same time, I'm gonna listen. And so that's one thing that we came to agreements. We came to agreement that we're gonna talk straight. We're gonna real talk. And that's one thing we came to agreement. So, I would say, if as allies to action, just be yourself and be real at all times.
Thanks, Julius. We're going to go to the last question, and then we're going to talk about some resources that we have to share with the audience. Before I do, I wanted to just bring up, so our last question is, how can we be more aware, or how can we, meaning the audience, be more aware as white Americans, how these incidences have affected Black Americans? And I want to hear from our mighty parents. I do want to make a comment that often we live in a very much individualized world where people think, well, I'm not racist, I didn't do it, I'm not, it's always the I. It's important to understand, and I'm going to give a framework. White culture produces this phenomenon of predictable types of behavior, right? And so which goes beyond individualism. And so sometimes you can see that through silence being a norm, or when there's, disbelief when you hear something happening and you're like, oh my God, how is this happening? This disbelief that happens. This is a very much a it's the sum is greater than its individual parts. And this is something that as African Americans, we fight against a lot, because often our allies or white friends will be like, I didn't realize it was always this bad, because collectively, this is a very predictable behavior that happens in the white culture. And sometimes that's something that's very difficult to hear. And I'm saying it so that there's awareness, because starting with how to move forward, you have to become more self-aware of how you're even operating within this racialized society that we all are part of and live in. So I'm going to ask the last question again. How could we be more aware as white Americans about how these incidents have affected Black Americans? And I know there's only three white people on this panel, but I think it's a valid question for all of us on the panel to kind of talk through that.
So I guess, for me, let me give you a simple example. Yesterday, our son graduated from D39 promotion, and he came downstairs, and how it's affected me as a parent, he came down and had a hoodie on. And as a parent, I know what happens sometimes when people wear hoodies and how they're judged. So my immediate reaction said, son, you're not going to your graduation with a hoodie. Take it off. He's like, why, Dad? I said, take it off. He said, we live in Del Sur. What's the big deal? Right? We live in Del Sur. What's the big deal? Well, in life, things really don't matter until they matter. You know what I mean? Like, would I be here at this, having this conversation, fighting for little nuances to make sure that my son doesn't make the same stupid mistakes and end up on the ground in a bad situation? It matters now. And if it matters to you, you have to stand up and fight for it. So I told him take it off, and he took it off. But however, that's changed my perspective as a parent. I have an older 21-year-old white son. He can walk out the door with the hoodie. I don't think I would ever say anything to him. Now I have two mixed Black kids. If they put a hoodie on, I tell them take it off. That's how it's changed me as a white man. I have to stand up and fight and make sure my kids are not put in that bad position.
Thanks,
I think it's interesting, and Michael and I have this conversation all the time, and I think this kind of speaks to how, when Michael and I first got married, he did not understand racism as a Black person, and that made sense because he grew up as a white man. And I remember telling him, you don't get it. And that's just the reality. Like, if listening to the stories of Black men, even as a Black female, the burden on them is so much more, in my opinion, than on me. I have a brother that I worry about, that you worry, can they not go out at a certain time? If they're in a certain neighborhood, is something going to happen to them? If they get pulled over. These are conversations. I think what strikes me as a mother is I had a conversation with my 16-year-old daughter, and I said, I wish in 2020 we did not still have to have this conversation with our children. These rules that are labeled, like Michael said, on our all white son, we've never had these conversations. If you get pulled over by a police officer, here's the list of rules that you need to follow. And if you follow them, you still might not make it out alive. That is a hard conversation as a parent to have with your son. Do all the things right, but we still don't know, because there's this injustice in the country. And it's interesting because I think for Michael, his journey is different than mine, because he hears me have conversations he's never heard before. He was from an all-white family. He has never listened to the type of conversations I have to have with our children when I force them to sit down to get an understanding, because they don't understand the impact yet. So I think it has to be talked about. We have to have these conversations to overcome, because there's so much here to unpack. Mm-hmm. Like, how do we make such a huge change? Because yes, we're better than we were, but we're not where we need to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything you're saying, Christina, is absolutely right. And I know in an hour and a half, there's no way that we can unpack everything, right? But at least this is like the beginning. This is the beginning, because I think we've all committed to saying that this is not all that we're going to be doing. You know, the original commitment were to the students, right? And so we starting to see that we continue to be committed to the students, to our kids, and then also parents are part of that, you know, bringing the parents in and hearing our stories and talking through some of these issues that are really important and need to be talked about. Okay, so I'm going to, Joe, you ready?
Yeah, so we have a document, friends, that Dahlia's going to talk about. It has our agenda with all the resources. So I'll put that in the chat box. And Dahlia, if you could talk about that, and then we'll open up to the town hall folks.
Okay, perfect. Oh, you know what? I'm going to have to open up. Uh-oh, I don't have it in front of me.
So
yep, there you go. Can you click on that link? You don't mind? Perfect. Can you make it a little bit bigger? Okay. So I think it was a gentleman earlier who really brought up the fact that we need to talk, you know, it gets beyond what we're doing right now. It really talks to, you know, how can you be an ally? How can you advocate for racial equity and justice? Well, a lot of that goes into your voting power, you know? And so one of the things that's going on in San Diego, and I'm just going to go through this list quickly because I know we've got about 20 minutes left and we want to make sure that we open it up to the audience. But in San Diego, showing support, we have a ballot in November that's going to be pushing forward an independent oversight commission on policing and holding the SDPD accountable for their actions. Currently, you have police officers policing each other whenever a claim is filed against a police department. And then the city council actually advises both the sheriff and the mayor. So there's another conflict. And then the district attorney also is part of the committee as it exists today. So there's a lot of overlap and a lot of, it's less of an independent party. It's more, and there's a conflict of interest. So this is why this ballot is going to be on the November measure. We'll definitely send you some information if you're interested after this, you know, after this town hall. I want to keep saying townhouse. I don't know why. Okay, next one. Before you give your vote, it's important to, you know, demand from your school board to the city council, to the state senator, to make racial justice a priority as part of their platform. That's so important. That's so key. Very often, a lot of candidates, they don't have it as part of their platform. Quite honestly, they don't know how to go about doing it. But we, as voters, can actually push them to maybe educate themselves and get on that, right? What about your school? Do you even know what the racial opportunity gap is in your school district? Well, find out from the teachers, from the principal, from the district, and then ask them, you know, what are you doing about it? That's very important. We talk about education for all children. All children includes Black children. And other children of color. We want to make sure that those things are addressed. When you're looking at the curriculum, I think someone brought up the curriculum. When you're walking into your kid's classroom, what do the books look like? Are they talking about history and accomplishments of Black people, of Native American people, of Mexican American people? Think about all of the demographics of groups that contributed to the state of California. How is that represented in your school, in the textbooks? Are we in the books that your kids are reading? Do you see mainly white children in the books? You know, are you seeing diverse kids in your books? All of these are so important. There's so much research out there that talks about how important it is for kids to see themselves in the classroom, and it really contributes to their self-esteem. Since we're a small and mighty Black support group here, it's important. We want to advocate for supporting Black-owned businesses. We've got eateries, we have attorneys. Black San Diego is a well-known app, a well-known Facebook page that has information on all types of Black-owned businesses. I'm myself personally working on creating a list for Pinewood Unified School District so that we can have more. This is just a little piece of it. We wanted to share that with you. Also, donate to an organization to fight for racial oppression. There's several of them in San Diego. There's a national bailout fund that you can contribute to. There's Black Lives Matter. There's the ACLU. There's Racial Justice Coalition. All of these organizations are very small grassroots, and they are trying to be out there, frontline legislation, things like that. There's also, if you could scroll down a little bit, Joe, there's a bill. So Prop 2009 was passed, I think, in the 90s, and the intent was it really removed accountability for making sure that public employment, public education, public contracting is looking at making sure that they're giving equal opportunity for hiring practices. When the prop came on, what the intention was like, we don't need affirmative action. So it was implemented into law. We saw a steep decline in contracts going to Black-owned businesses and businesses of other minority populations, and it's gone downhill ever since. So right now, Dr. Weber is trying to advocate for us to support the A5 bill to repeal that act in order to hold the public offices more accountable for making sure that there's more Black and brown people in these positions. And I think that is there any more? I think that's it, right, Joe?
Yeah. So I will go ahead and put that in the chat box, so that link, so everybody can go ahead and see that. It's the agenda along with all the resources. So you can click on that. It's a Google Doc that we'll share with you. So Dahlia, at this time, we could just open it up, and then we'll end with Chaz at 9:25. So go ahead and we'll moderate this from here. So if you want to unmute your mic, and we have the panel here, and give an opportunity for folks who are in Poway Unified to be able to share.
How do we?
I'm thinking if you can maybe put your hand up, maybe.
There's a tab, guys, on there. You can raise your hand.
Raise your hand on your. If you open up participants and you see that raise hand, just raise your hand and
we're ready to go. It's like, I think Darius and Sundays, what your screen name is. Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Hi. Obviously, my husband and I have a lot of thoughts around what's been going on. But because this is a PUSD forum, I wanted to talk about how PUSD can help us, specifically to PUSD and the parents of PUSD. And we have two daughters who attend PUSD, one at Bernardo Heights and one at Turtleback. And I just want to share briefly, because I know we're stretched on time, but I want to share just briefly that I think one of the challenges is that there's sometimes a lack of sensitivity and understanding about how we as a Black community fit into the PUSD community. And I'm going to just give you a brief example. So 2 years ago, when my daughter was in the 2nd grade, they spent the year talking about different cultures, different things. It was a whole program at Turtleback. And it started off with, hey, we're going to send this thing home. You bring it home to your parents and ask your parents these questions. And the questions were like, how did your ancestors come to this country? Why did they come to this country? Where are you from? And as we looked through the list, we were like, how do we answer these questions to our 2nd grader in a way that even begins to kind of shield them, but answer those questions, right? Then as the year went on, they were asked to come home and find out what country your ancestors were from. We don't know what country our ancestors are from in Africa. So when we went to the teacher's like, well, just pick a place. Like it doesn't matter where your ancestors are from in Africa, just pick a place. Then as the year went on, they talked about the civil rights movement. And my daughter, who's the only Black child in her class, was shown a video where they sprayed the Black people with the water hoses during the civil rights era. So my daughter comes home, she's in tears, she's afraid, she doesn't even want to go back to school because in her mind, as she sat in class, all of these people sprayed me. Let's fast forward as the year goes on. We're asked to complete a cultural doll. We have to go get fabric from the fabric store. There's one fabric of African print. No choices. This is what you're going to use. And then as we finally get to the end of the year, there's a cultural festival. Bring your food, bring your cultural dish. And so we made what's traditional for us. We made a sweet potato pie. And when we got to the festival, there was not even a place in the entire room for Africa. Africa was not even listed as an option of a place to put your food. They had all the different countries laid out, but because there was only 3 Black kids in the entire 2nd grade, they hadn't even bothered to leave a place for us to put our contribution. Yeah. When I brought it to their attention, oh, just go put it with Mexico. So all this to say, we spent a year in torture just trying to help our child to understand their culture and how it all fits in. And this is the kind of thing that we go through every single day. And just trying to understand. We didn't take it lightly moving up here to PUSD. We came for the schools, but we were very concerned about how we would assimilate culturally into this community. And this is just an example. I need PUSD to help me to think through some of these projects. Obviously, they didn't think this project completely through beginning to end, but you got to kind of think about the fact that our people did not come here on purpose. We came here on slave ships. These are things that we're going to have to now, these are conversations we had to have with our children that we didn't intend on having with her in the 2nd grade.
Yeah, and we have to take these kind of things into account whenever we move somewhere. We can't do just move anywhere like the average, white person can, or Filipino or whomever. We have to think about where we're going. So we had to sit down and have the conversation when we lived down in Bonita, saying, okay, we wanted to give them the best schools, but we have to think about the fact of what's going to happen, because most people that live in Rancho Bernardo, Forest Ranch, places like this, they look at us and expect that we don't have the ability financially to live here. So they look down on you. And so we can't just pick a place on the map anywhere in America and say, we're going to move there, or anywhere in California. We have to think about those things. And we knew it was going to be tough, but we wanted to make the sacrifice because the schools were the best, some of the best in the country, actually. And we had to say, okay, this is what we're going to do to make that sacrifice for them. But we know we're going to have a fight on our hands just dealing with people that are around us, because they won't accept you.
No, everything you're saying is absolutely correct. And it's a shame. This is a problem that's been going on in Poway Unified School District for a very long time. I believe that we are all aware of it. And it's time, I believe, for some things that need to be rethought of. For sure, it's overtime, right? And these are things that we've been talking about and trying to move forward with and supporting each other. Part of the issue is that there's not a lot of African Americans in Poway Unified School District, and we're all scattered around. But what we're trying to do is trying to come together more and more to hear your stories, to hear your stories and see how can we, strategically figure out, how can we empower, how can we show to the teacher that asked you that question to be a little bit more sensitive. And so next time they create that document, that question is maybe not a question to ask, or maybe in a different way.
Dahlia, we have teachers on this call. We have associate superintendents, district leadership. That's, by hearing those stories, that's going to make change.
Absolutely.
And so that voice being shared right now is super powerful.
Thank you.
I know our district leadership is in this space. As you know, Carol's been right there with us from the superintendent's office.
Carol.
We have our teachers here From across the district, I see Crystal from one of our other middle schools, here with her team, and I saw Highland Ranch. So people are stepping up. We have allies. Now we have to do something with that. And it's stories like that that were just shared that are super powerful.
So I just wanted to say to Darius and Sunday, we relocated our family from Orange County, California. So if you know anything about Orange County, it's very conservative and it's very white. We created a circle of friends over time. I started my business, my company there. My kids were all born there. And our kids were in private school there. So there was they just made more of an effort to reach out to every culture in the schools, as Catholic schools tend to do. So for us to just piggyback on what you just said, we had to make a serious choice about school district, private school, home, community, etc. And so we said, all right, Howard Unified is a great school district. We've done our research, we've done our homework, just like you guys did. We'll do that. We'll put them in the public school, and we will sacrifice them not going to private school. And that was very hard for their mom. She did not want to send them to public school. But I got to tell you something, and I want to give you some hope here. And here's the hope. Because we made that decision, put me here today with my friends in the No Place for Hate and the Small and Mighty. Had my kids not been in the public school, I may not have even been aware of any of this. So for that, I'm grateful and I'm thankful, and there is change coming. We were able to get in front of all of the principals, I think, across Power Unified. And if I'm not mistaken, Joe, you can correct me, that had never been done before. No parent group had ever been in front of leadership at their home office talking about this issue for as long as Power Unified School District has been around. I think the teachers that were there can attest to that. So what I'm trying to say to you is this. It is terrible what happened and how that happened, and the unawareness for the white folks on this call of just what you just heard. This is what we're speaking to. It was just a flippant comment that they made about, well, just put it on the Mexican table. I mean, come on, right? Not only was it offensive, it was appalling. But let's get past that, and let's just think about what that little girl saw in the history class when she had no build up to that. So this is the challenge we face. If you want to talk about the systemic issue we have with law enforcement, that's the other challenge we face. I'm going to give you a quick statistic that you may not have known about how law enforcement was started all those years ago here in the United States. They were built, every single law enforcement facility across our country has been built in poor and socioeconomic depressed neighborhoods. Look it up. This was a systemic, foundational pursuit. We are going to make sure that we keep the poorest among us and the lower socioeconomic among us in check. This was done by the most powerful white families as this nation was being formulated. Look that up, and it's a fact. And you look at the strategic setup of where these places were. So this is mass incarceration, these ideas that, we don't belong where they think we belong, and so we're going to make sure they don't go there. This is not made up, folks. This is the reality of our nation, and it is a challenge, but it's not impossible. And so just know that, one, we stand with you, especially with your children, and they will not. This too will pass, and it's going to pass because you've got a coalition of allies now that understand that we just got to. We don't want to just wake people up, guys. It's not just about waking them up. It's about telling them the history, educating them on what's going on, and then finding a path forward together.
Perfect, Chaz. So I know you're a closer, Chaz.
Oh, Joe, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is a very important comment that was made in the group chat. I feel like if we don't address it, then it might.
Let me just give 15 seconds to Carol. She's out of the superintendent's office.
Oh, yes, of course.
That's critical. And then I know Chaz is going to be our closer, which is not about closing. It's really about opening a new way forward for us. So thanks, Dahlia, for giving Carol just a few minutes. And I know she's not about her. It's about our work.
That's right.
I just want to express my deepest gratitude to our small and mighty. And yes, my voice is shaking tonight. Mr. and Mrs. Noel, your story will be the story I amplify with the leaders of Power Unified. I brought the small and mighty to the principles of Power Unified because I met with them and heard their stories. We are a learning organization. We are with you. We know we have work to do. And the only way we can do this is with you and doing better and standing alongside you. So thank you for being here tonight. Thank you to the small and mighty. You are small and powerful, and I am so grateful. Thank you.
No, thank you, Carol. You're so wonderful.
But thank you, Carol. We appreciate you so much.
We absolutely appreciate you. So I know Chaz is going to take it away, but I have to read this, and I as our last thought of the day, because I think this is such an important that happens often. Here.
Dahlia, she cut out. Chaz, are you ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready. I know she said that might happen.
Yeah.
So first of all, just really quickly, we want to thank all of you for taking the time to be here to address all of these issues. I want to, and we don't like to single people out. Our group doesn't do this, but I have to do this because I would be remiss if I didn't. Joe, we love you. Thank you for stepping up, for heeding my little question. You remind me often about how this got started, and we know that at the end of the day, no change is going to come if us adults don't, start pushing that change forward. So I always close when we're in the public forum with a poem. We don't know the author of this poem actually, but someone shared it with me a few years back, and Roxanne and I we have a lot of fun because I'll send her one about once a week. She goes, "Where do you get this stuff?" But just want to close with this, and we want to thank those on YouTube and all of our families here at Power Unified. And someone asked a question earlier. This is not just relegated to the Power Unified School District. This is, a PUSD thing. This is a San Diego Unified thing. This is everywhere. But we needed to start here because this is where it started for us. So if you feel moved to start doing something like this in your school district, hey, by all means, get after it. We are here to support you. We will find ways to get you resources. That's what we're here to do. We're not making this a mutually exclusive event. This is for everyone who is a parent of a child in a school in the great state of California and in the city of San Diego. So just know that. And we will find ways to reach out to you. Joe can send you guys the contact information on how that works. So I'm going to start with this. And as you hear this, I want you to think about the events over the last, 14 days. About the pandemic, and there's that, but there were lives lost in the last 90 days, especially African-American lives that needlessly were lost, that shouldn't have been lost. That's part of what brought us here together. The bad and poor language used in our schools by some of our children in schools towards our Black, Indian, and other racial family, children, just not good. So I want you to hear this, take it to heart. Joe will share this with you guys in the chat box, but it goes like this. Negativity is a choice. Resentment is a choice. Anger is a choice. Revenge is a choice. Hey, optimism is a choice. Compassion is a choice. Forgiveness is a choice. Empathy is a choice. How we live our one given life is a choice. Choose wisely. So I think he saw it there. So thank you guys for attending. We wish you good health, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Joe, for sharing it.
Thanks, Carol. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Carol. Thanks, Joe.
Joe.
Hey, small and mighty.
Joe.
Mighty. Woohoo, right?
Actually, got more work to do. So I know there's lots of questions around what can we do next? How do we connect with our small and mighty team? It sounds like we might need to put together a little space for people to continue the conversation moving forward. Resources were shared in the chat box. And then I know Poway Unified will want to do more of these that have more of a in-person, probably humankind interaction, town hall meeting, because we want to do more of that knuckle bumping. Right. So as I do with some of the students, right? It's like, here, everybody, come on, get on your screen. Let's get
Our new life.
Oh, I felt it. I felt that love. All right. Love you all. All right.
Thanks. Good night, everyone. Thank you, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. It was amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for showing up. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
God,
absolutely.
wouldn't miss it.
Thank you for showing up and leading us.
Hi, Roxy.
I know, Carol, you almost made me cry.
I'm still crying.
We miss you.
And next time we'll have some student voices in there. All right, Brianna?
Mm-hmm.
And Peter, right? I see you. Hey, Brianna, put your voice on. Let's hear you. What's your feedback? What's your reflection?
Hi, yeah, it was really eye-opening. Yeah, a lot of these things I didn't know before, and I'm sure a lot of people, other people didn't know before. So thank you, Small and Mighty Group, for sharing. It was really.
You are the future, girl. You know that. You're a future shaper.
That's right. She's shining bright. I can see it already.
Right like a diamond.
Change maker right there.
You make me cry.
Thank you.
All right, love y'all. Bye, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.